So once again, we're going to walk through the steps of our final solution today. It'll be worth 10 points. And then we'll post an outline and references with the details and the specifics that matter the most. This module is all about resilient support with robust infrastructure, how you set up robust infrastructure, how you start with Active Directory group policy objects and scripting, and how you set the stage for success. Some of the things that you've learned are really not much, they don't have much value if you have to do it piecemeal, one at a time, on one system at a time. So essentially, you'll notice since last week, we posted an assignment for managed network procurement. We wanted you to go out and research a managed switch. Everybody remembers the discussion we had about managed switches in our last session, yes?
I had to go, so I
Okay.
I did do the assignment though.
Well, in the resources folder, basically, we've got the videos that we're putting out there, and we have one from last Thursday, which is the 22nd, and we talk about this stuff on the, talked about some of these details on the 22nd.
Okay.
So
Do you have the one for Tuesday?
yeah, it's right below that.
Okay. Okay. I have to watch it.
Yes. So hang on just a second. Good afternoon. So after we walk through the steps for your resilient, you're going to be setting up robust infrastructure so that you can perform resilient support. We're going to demo an Active Directory GPO at work. On an actual Active Directory infrastructure. So that's the last thing that we'll do today. So first thing we wanted to do was to talk about the things you should already have in place. So essentially, what you should already have in place is a standard server 2019, a virtual machine with a minimum of 36 gigabytes of fixed hard drive space. I can add that too. 36 gigabytes of fixed hard disk space. It's got 4 gigs of RAM. It's properly licensed. It's in the correct time zone. It has a host name, a work group other than work group. A fixed IP address, right? By that we mean static IP address. Okay, the second thing that you have in place, you have hosts files configured on both the host and the VM that reference these names and IP addresses. Does everybody understand what I mean by this? Does anybody need to see what I'm talking about? Hello, hello.
Yeah.
So inside the Windows folder on the C drive, inside Systems 32, System 32 inside the drivers folder. Inside Etsy. If you look at all the files there listed, you have a hosts file. This is on, I just pulled this up on my laptop. My laptop has a reference to my virtual machine. My virtual machine has an appropriate name, right? No spaces, no punctuation, basically, and the IP address where it's at. On my virtual machine, I have the same thing, only it's pointed at my host. My host has a reasonable name. It's part of the same work group, which is not work group. You've set another work group name, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, if I look at this and look at advanced properties, basically it's the name of my laptop is ThinkPad 1. But if I wanted to know what kind of work group it's a part of, I created a work group name called VI-SERP. That's one of the programs on our campus. So if I look at my server, on my server, I have VI-SERP for a work group. I have STD-SRV1. I have a fixed IP address. Everything's licensed and good to know. Windows activation is good to go. And if I needed to, I could look up in Notepad. I can open the same thing and find the hosts directory. Everybody has that, right? Everybody's got that in place already. So I have a reference to the ThinkPad. It's sitting on a fixed IP address on 11. Now, that's statically assigned. By that I mean, when I look at my address, if I go inside my if I go up inside my my network settings, right? I want to change the adapter. If I go and look at my Wi-Fi, I basically have a statically assigned address, and on each of these devices, right? So my laptop has a statically assigned address. And what do you do to make sure that you have something that works right? Well, if you haven't done this already, you should probably be looking at your wireless router. If you log on to your wireless router and you log in, your router is going to look a little differently than mine, but basically if you go to the LAN option or network option, there's usually a DHCP server function. What you want to do is pick an address that's within the range and set up a DHCP reservation. So you're going to manually assign the IP address to that given MAC address. Or alternatively, you could give your laptop and your virtual machine an IP address that's outside the range of IP addresses that your wireless router assigns. And then that way, nobody else is going to take up the address and it's going to screw with your networking. So this is what you need to have the stage set in order to take up the things you have to have for your solution. I do want to talk about the other assignment. So I discovered a rather useful video on PowerShell. It's a full course. It's a 6-hour video. I don't expect you to watch 6 hours, but I do expect you to watch the first hour or so. And if you watch it and you're paying attention, you're going to find out, oh my gosh, these people really know the inside tricks of how to work with PowerShell. That's because the gentleman sitting on the right in this video is literally the man who invented PowerShell. He is literally the design engineer, a distinguished design engineer at Microsoft, who developed and designed PowerShell, and he provides a lot of really neat tips and tricks about how to get around. And they have a way of explaining things. It's like, okay, every command in PowerShell starts with a verb, an action word, like get or set. And then it's usually a dash, and then there's some kind of object or noun or an item, right? So you can get or set a thing. So the second phrase of a command in PowerShell is a noun or an object or a thing. Set network interface, get DHCP scope or whatever. They have an uncanny way of explaining how this works. I've never seen anything quite like it. All you have to do is watch the first part of this and then try out some of the commands on your own PowerShell screen. Take 2 snapshots of 2 different commands and submit those for the second assignment. Any questions about your second assignment?
No.
Okay. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about when I say you want to assign a permanent address that sits outside the addresses that your wireless router will assign?
Is it like the thing we did yesterday?
Yes, it's exactly like the thing we did yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. Another prerequisite that you have to have is that, and you should already have this configured, right?
I have to do that today.
If you did the previous assignments and solutions, you should already have working access to the virtual machine with RSAT and with WAC, Windows Admin Center. And that's really important. That sets the stage for you to work the final solution. Okay, if you don't have this in place, it means you haven't finished the other assignments or the other solution. So this shouldn't be a problem, but I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that you're going to have this. You're also going to want to be able to have the, just out of convenience, okay, 2 directory shares. This is another assignment we did. 1 on each system. Right? So you're going to want to set up the shares on the C drive. You can do that with ease. You can do that very easily with, that's the name. So you're going to put a $sign on the end of the, not the name of the, that's not the name of the directory, but that's actually how the share is, that's the name of the share. So anyway, you're going to have a directory, a temp directory on each machine. You're going to share it. You're going to hide it by putting a $sign after the name. This should already be in place. You're going to want to move data back and forth between the 2 systems. Okay. Any questions about the prerequisites for doing the solution?
I just have to do the RSAT thing today.
Yes.
Hopefully it works.
Yes, hopefully it does. Okay, so what's the first step for your solution? I'm gonna log out of this. The first step of your solution is really actually quite simple. You're going to open up. First, you're going to open up the RSAT. No, Windows Access. And Windows Admin Center. I had that open already. One of the things that gets people into trouble, both with RSAT and with Windows Admin Center, is that they forget to put in the credentials. So
Hi,
you'll,
Professor Kentop.
hello,
It's Reese.
hey Reese.
How are you?
Well, good. Who are you with today?
Raheem.
Oh, Raheem.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to let you go back to class now. Bye.
Yeah, you'll help keep him straight then. That's good.
Yeah, I got to keep you straight, buddy.
And then you pretend to shank me?
All right. So one of the things that causes issues is that people forget to specify the manage as credentials. You're going to go ahead and put in the credentials there so that you have positive access. The same is true on your RSAT. You can get to the point where even everything is showing with your netsh commands. And if you forget to right click it and then put in the manage as option, in this case, you have to state the name of the virtual machine followed by a backslash, the name of the administrative account you're going to use, and the password. You can check this box, remember me, but in most cases it won't work. In any case, it's really important to enter those credentials, or the other things you need to do won't work right. Anyway, getting back to Windows Admin Center, the first thing you're going to do is add 3 roles altogether. You've already added one, most likely. You're going to connect to your server in Windows Admin Center. You're going to scroll down and you're going to select roles and features. You will add the DHCP role. You will add the DNS role, and you will add the Windows Web Server IIS, right? You'll check those boxes. When you select those boxes, you'll click install. And what will happen is that it'll change from available to installed. This is the screenshot I need to see. This is the screenshot I need to see. That's the first milestone of your solution. You're going to successfully add the roles and features. Does anyone have any questions about what your first screenshot will be?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to capture that screenshot. I'm going to save it as DNS, DHCP, IIS, successfully added. See, I can see that they're installed instead of available. And that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing we're going to do, you're going to use RSAT to do. When you've connected to RSAT, so it could be that sometimes you lose the connection to your server, you have to start over again and specify a new server. That's not hard to do. You can basically delete the thing that's messed up, and then you can add another server. On the dashboard, you add other servers to manage. You're going to select DNS. You're going to put in the name of your server. And if you wait for it long enough and hit enter, if you see an IP address appear, it means your host's file is working. Everything is good. You're going to select that. And then you're going to click OK. Then you can go back to all servers and it'll show here. Once you right click and fill in your credentials for manage as, you'll notice this stuff will work. If that isn't clear, it's because you have a net sh command that's missing. We sent email about that last month. You can basically just reissue the same commands. In any case, once you have this screen going, from the dashboard, you can tell DHCP is installed, DNS is installed, and IIS is installed. It'll show the same thing that Windows Admin Center showed. But what we're interested in is configuring your DNS. So we're going to right click this and you'll see on the list DNS Manager. Once your server is connected and there are proper credentials in Manage As, this option will appear. It will not appear before then. If you try to pull it from the Tools menu, it may or may not work. You may get a different result where it says it can't connect. That's why you're going to want to use this option by right-clicking and selecting DNS. Comes right up then. Go figure. Once again, this is one reason why remote server administration tools, RSAT, the server manager we're used to seeing here, they're phasing it out. You're going to select standard server. What you're going to do next is you're going to create a reverse lookup zone. The reverse lookup zone allows your DNS to function in a two-way fashion. And what you'll find is that there are a couple of them already in there. The 0 address, the loopback address, and the 255 broadcast ranges are already in there. But what you're going to do is you're going to create a zone that matches your IP address. What am I saying? On your server in your home, you have a 192.168.1 or you have a 192.168.0. I'm going to pretend that we're adding a .0. You're going to select reverse lookup zones, create a new zone, and you're going to accept that it's a primary zone. This is for reverse lookup. You're going to type in the first 3 octets of your network ID the way they would normally appear. 192.168.1. Well, I said I was going to put 0. So I'll put 0. I'll click next and next. I'm going to leave that default the way it is. I'm going to say finish. Whenever I make a change on my DNS server, whenever I reconfigure something or add a resource, the first thing I'm going to do with my DNS server is that I'm going to select the DNS server. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to clear the cache. I'm going to select it again and right click it again. I'll select all tasks and restart the service. Once again, whenever you make a change on the DNS server, in order for it to take effect, you need to clear the cache and you need to have that in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this just because I don't want it to confuse the heck out of mine. I don't have the 192.168.0 subnet connected to this system. But so I just made a change. So what am I supposed to do? I just made a change to my DNS server. How do I make sure I've fully removed that .0 subnet? What do I have to do with the server to make sure that that change takes effect? Anyone?
Would you restart?
We have to restart the service, and I have to clear something else first. What is it?
You have to clear the DNS.
I have to clear the cache. Clear the cache and then restart the service, right? I'm going to restart the service. I'm also going to do something else before I create my first domain name. I'm going to configure my standard, my DNS server I'm gonna right click the name of the server and configure the DNS server. And when the wizard starts, I'm gonna select the bottom option, configure root hints only. I want my DNS server to be useful as a DNS server like the internet service providers give you to use to browse the internet. That's what this option does. So what I want you to do is to expand the reverse lookup so that it shows your new subnet. And I want you to take a screenshot of this where it says configure root hints only. You're going to capture a second screenshot. We're going to call this DNS config 1, right? So I'm going to take a screenshot of this. This is the second milestone for my solution. I'm going to paste that in there and save it. So my second artifact for the second point out of 10 points, I'm going to say DNS config 1, showing reverse lookup and root hints. Any questions?
None so far.
All right. So here's the fun part. When I click finish and I go ahead and I clear the cache and I restart the service, I'm going to do something really bizarre. I have a server running on my system that I can use as a DNS machine now, right? That means I want this system to use itself, and I want my laptop to use the server for my DNS. I'm going to show my network settings here. So I'll enter option 8, and I'll select the interface where my static IP is. And I'm going to show that my preferred DNS server is 192.168. And it's going to be the address of my server. DNS is running. I want it to point to itself. On my laptop, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to change the adapter setting. I'm going to go into the properties. On TCP/IP, I'm going to do the same thing. This is the next step that I need to take in order for this to work properly. Now, if I want to make sure this thing is really working, I have to throw my hat over the fence. So if I had an alternate DNS server, I'm going to take that out. In fact, I'm going to go in here. I'm also going to take out my 8.8.8.8. And I'm going to just leave 192.168.1.12 in here. I'm going to do the same thing. On my server, I'm going to go into set the DNS servers. And I'm going to enter the new preferred DNS server. And if you don't already have this thing pointed to your DNS server, you're going to put that in there. And when it asks you for an alternate, you're going to enter blank. So you just have one. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to open up a command prompt, right? And in order to do that, while my server is running, so I can have this menu running, but I can also open a separate command prompt by inputting Control-Alt-Delete. selecting Task Manager, going to the File option. So if there's fewer details showing, you don't have the File option, but click More Details, go to File, Run New Task, put in CMD, and then it'll start another command prompt. That'll give me more than one command prompt to work with, right? You can close Task Manager after you're done. But what we want to issue here is the IP config. So we flush the cache and we restart the service on the server, but in order for the clients to make use of this, we have to use IP config flush DNS on the server when we make a change to the server configuration. We also do the same on my laptop. I'm going to open up another as an administrator on my laptop. I'm going to type in ipconfig / flush DNS. Now that looks kind of busy. All right. But essentially, we want to see these screens. We want to see that you flush the DNS on your laptop and your host, and that it's only showing the DNS. Okay. Is everybody with me?
Yeah, didn't we do this yesterday too?
Well, yeah, we did.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but you didn't take a screenshot of it. You just have to open up this stuff. I'm going to
Yeah.
take a screenshot of this and I'm going to say, okay, this is the third artifact, right? So this is DNS config 2. That's artifact number 3, DNS config 2. Now, you're probably thinking, so what, big deal? Well, here's where the fun starts. You're going to create a forward lookup zone, something really catchy. I created one the other day called Snurkle. But then yesterday I decided to get serious, so I have my own creation.net. A student yesterday gave me her own name because she's going to start a business and she's going to be a consultant. So it's deannahunt.biz. I want somebody to give me a domain name to use right now. You're going to create your own domain name, and I want somebody to help me come up with an example to demonstrate this in class. Who would like to demonstrate a creative domain?
I would love to, but I can't right now.
You can't. Okay. So somebody suggested midnight.net the other night. Turns out it's already in use. So what you'd want to do is open up a browser tab and just try a domain name out. If you're like mycoollady.com. Okay, so that doesn't work, right? That means that that's probably an available domain name.
But don't you have to pay for these domain names?
Well, yes and no. You can set up a domain and run it on an internal network without paying for it. If you want it to be public internationally on the open internet, then you register it, sometimes for as little as $1 a year if you go to websites and register it. What we want to do is demonstrate the power of DNS and how DNS helps to establish or anchor resilient network infrastructure that you use to implement an Active Directory domain. And then we want to demonstrate how that's an advantage, right? So can I get a volunteer to help me come up with a new name?
You can do Momo Stan.
Say again?
Momo Stan.
Momo Stan?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to create a new zone. I'm going to right click here after I select forward lookup zones. I'm going to create a new zone. It's going to be the primary record of this domain. So this domain name server, the DNS server, is going to be the official server worldwide, globally, for this new domain. That's why it's called the primary. You said Momo Stan,
Yeah, Momo Stan.
like MOMOSTAN
Yeah,
.com.
yeah.
.com. All right, so it's going to create a new zone file named momostan.dns. I don't want dynamic updates. I don't want hackers to change it dynamically. I'm going to click finish. Now I want this to work. So I just made a change on my DNS server. What do I need to do to make this domain active? For the server to carry this new domain, what do I need to do?
Would you clear the cache and restart it again?
Exactly. I'm going to clear the cache and I'm going to restart the service. Okay. Now I need to establish a host in there. I'd like to establish a host that has a website. It just so happens that I installed a web server on my system. I installed IIS, so I have a web server running on the same system. So I'm going to use a little bit of a trick here, but I'm going to create a host record, a new host record, by right-clicking this white space. And I'm going to call this name what my server is called, SRV1. And for the IP address, I'm going to enter the IP address for my server, and I'm going to check the box that says create associated pointer record. So I'm going to put in 192.168.1.12. That's the IP address, the fixed IP address of my virtual machine. I'm going to add the host that says it was successfully created. And now I'm going to add an alias. When you're using the web browser, oftentimes we put in www. So I'm going to add a new alias or a CNAME. I'm going to add the alias www, and I'm going to browse for the host I just added. Because I cleared the cache and restarted the service, I'm going to be able to find it. If I hadn't, I would not be able to find my domain. But there's my new domain, Momostan. And I'm going to select the web server host, and I'm going to say, okay. Now I just set the stage for people to find my web server worldwide. What do I need to do to make sure these new records and aliases are active on this running DNS machine? What do I need to do?
Then I'm not sure.
Clear the cache and restart the service. I
Is it
made another change. I want to load that change into the memory. So I clear the cache and restart the service.
So every change you have to do that.
Every single change.
All right.
It's just a good habit. And here's why. If something doesn't work, you can troubleshoot, right? I have a DOS prompt here, right? I don't know that I've ever tried to browse to Momostan or ping it, but a good test is to see if I can ping STD-SRV1 at, let's see, STD-SRV1 momostan.com. Lo and behold,
That is cool.
it is very cool. It doesn't get any cooler than that. Now, you want something even cooler?
Do it.
Open up a web browser tab. Type in www.momostan.com. Boom. There's my stuff. This is your last DNS artifact that you capture. You have an image of your web server in the background with your new domain. with the alias www.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's that easy, right? Now, how is it that other systems get to navigate to this web server? Well, if you register it publicly and then you tell the world, okay, now use my domain name server for the record, then within 24 hours, the rest of the domain name servers on the planet will have this information and you'll be able to go. We can do this locally or internally all day long. The point I'm trying to make is I'm also going to add one more record in here before I stop.
That they can talk. So so no one else can use MomoStan if they're doing an internal website.
They can, they're just going to use, they're going to have to use your zone. So when you're the first to claim it and you have the primary zone for that, nobody else can have a primary zone with exactly that same name on the same network.
Okay, so they would have to change the name slightly to have their own zone.
They would, yeah. All right, so this is my host, the name of my laptop. I'm going to add one more record to my domain name service, just because I want the DNS to be able to find names of hosts based on, I want them to be able to, I want my software and my infrastructure to be able to refer to computers by name or users by name. So I'm going to go ahead and add a host record for ThinkPad. I'm going to enter the address for ThinkPad. I'm going to check the box that says add a host. And now I should have this, but it's not active in memory yet. So I have to clear the cache, restart the service. I'm going to click on MomoStan so that these are showing my web server, my alias, and my host. Those three things are showing. Up here, my custom web, my website with my custom domain name is showing, and a successful ping to standard server.momostan.com, right? Those three things are going to be on the screen. I'm taking a final screenshot. That's the last thing I need to capture for my DNS. All right,
Yes.
that's the last. So this is the fourth artifact. I got 4 points logged on my solution already. This is the final DNS. See, working zone. Both host records, the CNAME, and a web, successful web screen, right? That's what I'm doing for my DNS. This concludes our part of the DNS. Any questions on what we did for DNS?
No.
Now, if you want to have an Active Directory domain and you want to centrally manage things with ease, you have to have DNS in place. But that's not enough, because when computers connect to a network, when they first join the network, unless something tags them and anchors them to that DNS server, they're never going to see this information. And this is where hackers will run their own DNS service, right? There's all sorts of little hacks you can do to start a DNS service on a host. That you can even use a Raspberry Pi and connect a Raspberry Pi to a network and redirect DNS queries to taint the records, to hijack sessions. It's really nasty stuff. But if you want secure, smooth, hot, reliable network service that never dies, what you need to do is force your clients, when they join a network, to pick up the DNS server. We just went to the trouble. We took the time and loving care to construct, because this is how we find resources, and this is how we can set up an Active Directory domain, right? So what we're going to do is anchor our DHCP. If we have DHCP going, then when we have the network started, remember last class, we talked about managed switches. Managed switches have a function called IP helper. On a managed switch, you can define where a connected device or system will pick up its DHCP. The DHCP in turn pins the DNS down and also does things like turn off NetBIOS and define route statements and set up time servers. There's all sorts of interesting things. Define domain names for each of the clients, right? You can set all that up on your DHCP. So DHCP is another piece of the puzzle when it comes to robust infrastructure. In order for Active Directory GPOs to work properly, you have to configure DHCP. So what we're going to do now is set up our DHCP. We're going to go back to our server manager and we're going to right click this time. And we're going to select DHCP manager. Now, you'll notice that we're multitasking with this one server. We're going to set up the DHCP service on this DHCP server, and we're going to make darn sure that it doesn't clash with the DHCP that's being done with our Wi-Fi router. Once again, we're going to set up a DHCP scope to define where all our clients go for DNS. We're going to anchor all of the network security in that manner by setting up a scope with DNS criteria. As soon as a device or a system gets its automatically assigned address, it also gets additional settings that disable NetBIOS, configure DNS, attach the domain name to the end of the host, all that good stuff, right? We're going to open up our server, and the first thing we're going to do with our server is we're going to select DHCP and we're going to manage authorized servers. Because when you open up DHCP the first time, your system is running DHCP as a service, but it's not set up properly in order to function. In fact, when you add DHCP, it's going to fuss in here about having to add security groups. It'll say you have to complete the DHCP configuration, and it'll say you have to add DHCP administrators and DHCP users. To accomplish this task, you're going to use your Windows Admin Center. You're going to select users and groups. Inside users and groups, this is the user screen. We're going to select groups. You're going to create a new group and call it DHCP administrators and DHCP users. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you do this right, you'll be able to show this window and this situation here, right? This is a screenshot you're going to add. So this is your first DHCP artifact. I'm going to capture this. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Robert?
Yeah,
How's everybody else doing? Aaron?
Oh yeah, I'm there. I'm here.
Yeah.
yeah,
Milan, everybody got this?
yeah.
Okay, all right. So this is your DHCP, right? Group. We're going to say security group setup. All right. So when you're finished doing this, and you go back to this screen, you can just go ahead and click cancel. This is really kind of just a notice. You should have a screen that shows that your groups have been added, right? So now we're going to go back to our DHCP MMC. And the first thing we're going to do is manage authorized servers. When we open up the screen, we're not going to see anything there. We're going to click authorize. And then we're going to type in the name of our DHCP server or the IP address. So I'm going to put in 192.168.1.12. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. It pulled my name. So that tells you that the DNS is working properly. That's an important point. I'm going to say OK. It's going to say it couldn't contact Active Directory, but you're just going to say OK, and you're going to close that. And then you're going to select the IPv4. Now I already have a scope that's active in here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't want that to be an issue. I'm going to demonstrate again what we're doing. And I'm also, since I made that change, I'm going to restart the service on this server. So I'm going to right click that and restart the DHCP service. So I was testing this to demonstrate it to make sure it worked right. But you notice on my Wi-Fi router, I use addresses from 2 to 21. So I'm going to create a new scope. So when we talk about DNS, we're talking about zones. When we talk about DHCP and a range of addresses, we want to issue out to connected devices and systems. We're talking about a scope. We're going to change some settings on the scope, and we're going to add some additional settings to the server. And between those two, we'll be able to define every aspect of our network so we can lock it down. We're going to right click this and select new scope. The new scope wizard starts. We're going to call this we'll call this our test network scope 1. Just give it that name, right? You can make it shorter if you want. Test net 1 or something like, yeah, let's do that. Test net 1. That I kind of like that. Test net 1. My starting IP address has to be outside the range of addresses that my virtual machine uses, my host machine uses, and any of the IP addresses that my Wi-Fi router assigns. So I'm going to make it high. I'm going to say 192.168.1. I'll say 51. And then the ending address will be like 100, right? 192.168.1.100. Whoops. Now you'll notice the subnet mask, I'm going to leave it 255.255.255.0. I'm not going to exclude any addresses, but I could exclude some of the addresses I've just carved out. I'm going to take the DHCP lease and I'm going to make it 0 days and 4 hours. If a hacker figures out how to break your network, well, within 2 hours, it requests a reset to renew the lease. So usually what happens is that a hacker goes through a lot of trouble to get your network to the place where they own it. And then if that lease time is set down to a low number, like 4 hours, then halfway through, about 2 hours later, it's going to want to reset the lease. It'll pull those values fresh from the DHCP. It'll overwrite what the hacker did. It really pisses them off. But basically having a lower lease duration is actually a good thing in most cases. I'm going to say next. I'm going to configure the DHCP options. In particular, I'm going to tell it where the gateway is. so that that's included when the address is assigned to every system. And then I'm going to put in the domain name and the server name and these IP addresses. I can include additional domain name servers if I want. So I'm going to put in the parent domain, which was, what was it? Momosan?
Yeah, Momostan.
Momostan.com. And I'm going to put in the server name STD SRV1. Okay. I'm actually going to remove these other options here just for now, because I only want this one, right? I'm going to click next. I'm going to ignore WinS servers because I don't want NetBIOS going. I'm not going to configure that. And I will activate this scope now. When I click finish, what I have is an active scope. I have an address pool from 51 to 100. And as devices and clients start taking up addresses, they'll be listed here. I can create reservations so that basically I can assign a specific address out of that range to a given MAC address. It's like a manual assignment in my wireless router. That means that if my network card turns automatically back to automatic DHCP assignment, that server, that important device or important system won't change the address, won't get lost. People won't get disconnected from their resources. More importantly, I want to define server options. So, but before I go on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show these scope options. So it shows 192.168.1.0. It shows the scope options for the router, the DNS server, and the domain name. This is your second DHCP screenshot. Does anyone have any questions about what's expected for your second DHCP screenshot?
No, sir.
All right. So I'm going to save this as. I have item 6 now. That's my DHCP scope with scope options. DNS, gateway, domain. So anytime something gets an address, it's going to have the name of the host with momostan.com at the end. But we're not finished. We have to do one more thing with our DHCP. What do I need to do to make this active? I just changed the configuration, but that's not in the active memory of the service that's running. How do I make sure this is loaded in there?
Clear the cache, restart.
Well, if there was a DHCP cache, we would. Oh. No, I'm on DNS. All right, I want to be on DHCP. How do I make sure that this new scope is added to my,
Flush the DNS.
well, I'm on DHCP and there is no such
Oh,
cache in
DSP.
there.
Okay, yeah.
But I can restart the service. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm restarting the DHCP service, and now that scope is actually active and it's working, right? So it's running now on my DHCP service. If I have one more thing I need to do here, it's to define server options. So if I take not the scope, but the server, I can define more options. So I'm going to configure server options in my DHCP. One of the most important things I want to do for an Active Directory domain is I want to configure the time server, okay, or NTP server a little further down. There are general options and there are advanced options. You would want the advanced options. Click the advanced tab, and basically if you define the server, the time server, what it means is that hackers can't change the system time. Your devices and systems get their system clock adjusted in synchronization with public NTP servers. You can look those up. Free NTP servers. There's a whole pool of time servers out on the internet. You can basically take one of these and add it. Let's see, for Oceania, North America, we're in North America. We're going to use server 0.NorthAmerica, right? So it's 0.NorthAmerica.pool.ntp.org. Let's see if we have one for the Virgin Islands. Virgin Islands, US, vi.pool.ntp.org. But there are 0 servers that are actually running right now. So that's not a good, it's not a good choice. Let's pick one that's general here. You can add the following to your file. So I'm going to use 0.NorthAmerica.pool.ntp.org. I'm just going to use that one. Or I could use one in Puerto Rico. It's nearby. No, they don't have one. Panama has 4. Mexico has 16. Let's see, what about the United States? The United States has a US pool. Let's see if we can find one that's closer to, maybe there's a Miami, right? I'll go ahead and use 0.us. No, I'll use the last one. Everybody probably loads those other ones. 3.us.pool. I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to put it in a text file first just to get rid of any HTML. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and cut it. Then add it to my scope. So I'm going to put this in. I can resolve this and it gives me an address. So I can add it. But I'm not done. I can also pin down the DNS servers. So I could define a DNS server for everything that is served an IP address from this whole server, not just the zone. I can define my DNS. I'm more interested in something else here. I'm interested in I can define broadcast addresses. I can define static routes if I want to shape the network traffic. I would like to define the NetBIOS over TCP/IP node type, the WinS node type. It's not this first one, NetBIOS, that I want. It's the node type. If I have a 0x1, it means I'm not doing NetBIOS. That's what that means. So basically, if I leave it 0x0, NetBIOS is enabled. But if I say 1, then I'm changing it so that, let's see, 0 mode, P mode, H mode. Oh, H node is hybrid. M node, P node, B node. I think it's P node that I want. So, yeah, P node uses a NetBIOS. No, we don't want that. M node. So this probably tells us real quick. Broadcast the name asking for the IP peer-to-peer using NetBIOS mix. We want B node. We only want pure IP. So we want B node. We're going to define this. B node is 0x1, like I thought in the first place. 0x1 is what I want. I'm going to hit apply. Now you see I have a time server listed and NetBIOS set. That means I can lock down Active Directory so that it's bulletproof. This is the last screenshot that you need for your DHCP service. Okay. So at this point, you're going to say save as, and this is item number 7. And you're going to say DHCP server net options time server NetBIOS disabled. Actually, there is one more I'm going to show. We're going to capture for DHCP. We're going to show the restart. So I want you to get a screenshot of your restart happening. That'll be the final DHCP. Okay. So it says, please wait while the DHCP. Yeah, get that screenshot. Get it on your system here. And here it's going to be snapshot number 8. Okay. There we have it. I need 1 minute. Can everybody pause for a second?
Yep.
Okay. The last 2 screenshots, we're going to capture together. We're going to do it right now. Can everybody hang tight for about 3 or 4 more minutes?
No problem.
Okay. So what we have is a case where if you have a managed switch in place, the moment something connects, it's going to say, where's your DHCP server? Here's your DHCP server. That's what's going to happen when you connect with a managed switch. Right? You're going to connect, and the managed switch is going to have an IP helper statement configured. So anything that broadcasts to connect, it's going to be told where to go to get its DHCP. When it connects and gets its DHCP assignment, it's going to have certain scope options set and certain DHCP server options set. And it's going to improve security by disabling WinS, NetBIOS over TCP/IP. It's going to assign a time server. It's going to define the DNS server, the gateway, and the domain name that everybody's going to use. All of that's going to be locked down, right? So why is that so magical? Well, if you have a tight network that's secured and it's time synced together, you can run Active Directory. You can run an enterprise security account managed model, right? You can have a domain. And what I wanted to do was to show you how this works when it's all together. So what we're going to do is pause again, and I'm going to queue up another screen to remote into the demo we did a couple of sessions ago. Does everybody remember when we built an entire Active Directory domain in an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is show you what's possible. To show you what's possible, once you have this set up, how you can centrally manage things. We'll take 2 screenshots. The first screenshot we're going to do is going to be when we create a group policy object. And then we link the group policy object, right? So when you're working with group policy objects, you're applying central management policies to a domain, a site, or an organizational unit. Right, hang on a sec. So this is the last step. I'll tell you when to press print screen on your side. But basically, what we wanted to do was to return to the domain environment we staged just a couple of sessions ago. You may recall we have 2 domain controllers, Mensa and Orion. And then we have Mercury, that's a DNS machine. And then we have a web server, right? So between those machines, we have the basis for a scalable network we could use to support an entire Fortune 500 company or a government agency. I'm going to log into Orion. And I'm going to use that to create my group policy object. And instead of linking a new group policy object to, does everybody remember we created canis.local?
I don't think I was here.
Yeah, that was our last session.
Yeah, we created canis.local. So in this environment, I have a managed network, much like the one we just built. I've got the pieces I need for the Active Directory environment. I have the 2 domain controllers. I've got a DNS machine, a DHCP machine. I've got a web server. And the main thing is that one of these, I think it's Antares, is a Microsoft Windows software update server. And I want all of my systems to update automatically at 1,000 times the speed. I want them to update a 300 megabyte monthly update and do it over lunch in the blink of an eye. I don't want people to lose a day of work because, you know, a couple of hundred systems are all trying to pull down so many hundreds of megabytes of updates, right? And so this is the last piece of it. I'm going to set up the group policy object, and then I'm going to go to my DNS server, and I'm going to update I'm going to go ahead and update the policy on that system. When we have a domain, we can include login scripts. I can set up, everybody remember me showing you how to set up new users? So if I have new users, I have an enterprise. I have like an enterprise user right here. I can set up. Did I or did I not show you how you can set up a profile where there's a login script? You can set up roaming profiles and all this, right?
Yeah, I don't think I was here for that either.
Okay, well, does anybody remember seeing something about a login script?
No, but this process is in the previous videos, right?
Uh, I don't think we made it to the, I think we got to that part, but I don't know if we
Okay.
went through it.
Okay. So I'm gonna create a new user. And I'll go ahead. Remember that organizational units are a way to organize your environment. And I've created one called Enterprise Admins, or EA for short. When I create this policy, I really want to go ahead and attach it to the whole domain. So I want anything in the domain to get its updates from the local server 1,000 times faster. And I want that to stick. Every time they log in, I want that policy to refresh. So if I create a new user, and let's just let's create a new organizational unit called a new OU called St. Thomas Students, right? So STT, we'll just call it the STT campus, right? And then I'll also create a new organizational unit called STX for St. Croix. Okay, everybody with me so far?
Yeah,
All right. And Robert, you're over on St. Thomas, right?
yep, that's correct.
All right, so I'm gonna create a new user. And what's your last name, Robert?
Laware, Laware.
Well, that's right. Robert Laware. So I'm gonna create a new login called R Laware. First initial, last name, right? I'm just gonna put in a nonsense password. And I'll make you change your password the first time you log in, right? And so now I have a new user account. So on any of the hundreds of systems in this domain, Robert Laware has a login now. But I can go into the properties and go into a profile. I can take the contents of his user profile on his local system, copy that to a server, and then make it his home folder. So everywhere he logs in, his profile follows him. His desktop, his documents, his videos, his pictures, his shortcuts, everything, right? But mainly desktop and documents. So when he logs in, what would normally be on the users directory of a local machine only is on the server. And everywhere he goes, it's going to connect as his H drive, his home folder, right? His home directory, H for home. And I'm also going to put in a login script here. And one of the things I want the login script to do every time Robert logs in, I want it to run GP update space / force. And what that's going to do is it's going to take any group policy associated with Robert's login or that computer, and it's going to execute that policy all over again. So if somebody hacks that system, if somebody undoes stuff, this is almost like a reset button. It's almost like an automatic reset button. It can reset specific policies on that system or for that user to make sure, that the important things don't change. That's the kind of control I can have, right? So not only can we have common resources that follow Robert everywhere, but we can also have commands that refresh these policies. Now let's make the policy happen. I want to go ahead and use Antares. I'm pretty sure Antares is the one that has Windows Software Update Services. I just want to be sure by logging in and look at it. It'll just take a second. How are we doing on time? Are we good for another minute or two?
Yeah, I got time.
Aaron, Milan, you good? Whoops,
No, sure.
we're almost there. So if I look at what's on Antares, it's going to say Windows Software Update Server, I'm pretty sure. And I want this system to work all the time. There it is, Windows Software Update Service, right? So in just a minute, we'll see another role pop in here. Role number 3. Oh, there it is, Windows Software Update Services. So this is my local copy of all these things. And Antares is the machine. Antares on canis.local. So I'm going to go to this machine here, and I'm going to open up a special tool called Group Policy Management. And I'm going to open up a policy for the domain. And I'm going to create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm going to call this like my test GPO, right? And I could also say, you know what? I'm going to go with the sites. And if I have St. Croix and St. Thomas set up as separate sites, I could have group policies that apply only to St. Thomas students, only apply to St. Croix students, and so on. But I want it to be a part of this default domain policy. And so, yeah, actually, instead of creating a separate GPO, I'm actually going to change the default. I'm going to change the default to include this, right? So here are the settings I'm looking for. And if I go inside there and I look at the computer configuration and I look at all this stuff, I can find the place where the Windows Software Update Service is listed. So I got to find the GPO, the group policy object. And there's the default policy. So I have this one I created, but I have this default domain policy, and that's the one I'm going to edit. So it's one thing to see the things listed here, but you actually have to go into the group policy objects OU and then find the one you want and then edit it. So when I edit this thing, does this look familiar? Does this look like the MMC, the security policy on the local machine?
Indeed, it does.
Yeah.
Does everybody remember I said when you get on a domain, you can see something that looks like this? Only when you make the change here, what does it affect? Everything in the domain, right? So if you have 1,000 computers, you're making a change, right? I have Windows administrative templates. I have Windows components. I have my Windows Update server. I'm going to specify an intranet server. I'm actually going to type in, I'm going to enable this policy, and I'm going to type in HTTPS. Now, there was something in here about the right kind of port. I think it's like 850. Let me look at this real quick. So everybody see 8530 and 8531?
Yeah,
This one is actually the good one to use. But I just set up this Windows software update service and I may not have the secure socket layer set up, the HTTPS. So I'm going to use 8530. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Well, let's see, where did I go? Where am I? Here. And let's go back to here. Okay, so I'm going to type in HTTP. And because I have DNS, I'm going to put in Antares dot Canis dot local colon what was it, 8530?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also going to say, okay, I'm going to set the statistics server to the same thing. So it's going to tell me, all right, which systems updated, which ones didn't. I'll know where the problem children are. So this one's going to push the updates. This setting's going to update me on what's going on. I'm going to click apply. I'm going to hit OK. There's another setting that says, do not allow updates from alternate sources. Do not connect to any Windows Update internet locations, right? I don't want this to update from the internet. I want it to update from the local setting. So if I enable this, it's only going to pull from the local machine, right? So this is one way you can make sure that I'm getting a local copy. I'm not getting it off the internet. I'm not slowing everybody's internet down, right? So I can do this and set this, and that's going to make sure that anything that's configured that way is going to work that way. But here's what I want to do before I forget this. I want everybody to grab a screenshot. Let's see if we can roll this up. Let's take a screenshot. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take this screenshot. I'm going to capture that here. This is screenshot number 9. So we're going to call this the WSUS AD domain what's this called? Intranet site config, right? GPO. I'm going to say default domain GPO. Yeah, we've already got the word domain in here, so. All right, so WSUS Active Directory intranet site config on the default domain GPO. That's number 9. Okay. Now, do we have to apply this if it's on the domain? Well, yeah, we do. So we're going to do a couple of things. Everybody remember what we do in DNS when you have to set something? What's the magic sauce you have to do with DNS if you make a change?
Clear.
Clear catch.
You gotta clear the cache, right?
Clear catch.
Right.
Yeah. Now, because we changed the default domain policy, we don't have to link this policy. It's already built in. It's already linked to the default domain, right? It is the default domain policy, so I don't have to link that policy object to apply it. But what I do need to do is replicate it, kind of like clearing the cache and then running the update. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run rep admin space / sync all. Everybody see where it says terminated with no errors? You remember this from the other class, don't you?
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was building out the domain, it wasn't quite no errors, and we got it to the point where it said no errors. You don't remember that? Yeah, kind of, sort of, maybe. All right, so on the domain, you have to do this. It's like the server side where you're clearing the cache and restarting the service. Okay. Then on the client side, where's my other machine? Let's take Mercury. Everybody remember Mercury? Another machine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to log in. And so Mercury, on Mercury, when you make a DNS change, you want to flush the DNS, ipconfig flush DNS on the client machines. On the server, you want to clear the cache and restart the service. In this case, we ran our replicate administrative command, right? That updates the policy on the domain level. And then on the machine level, I'm going to do my GP update force. I'm going to hit this. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, now I got to update the policies. If there were any policies to update, I have to do that. The computer policy has completed successfully, right? Now the user policy has completed successfully. So this is one of the things I'm going to show is this GP update force. And we're going to show this, but I gotta do one more thing. I'm going to open up the security policy, the local security policy tool, like the one we did on my machine, right? No, that's not what I want. MMC. I'm going to add the group policy object thing, right? Does this look familiar to anybody? Local computer policy.
It should. I wasn't here for that class.
Okay. I did this on my own system. I showed you how you can apply policies to manage systems, right? This is on each machine, the local policies on each machine. We did it over here on the domain. So if I go into administrative templates, go into Windows components, go into Windows updates. If I go into here, it should say that your domain is configuring this. If I go to enable this, so ordinarily you'd see, what you'd see here is our server name, Antares canis.local. This would be grayed out inside here. And for some reason, it's not showing yet. But But basically, when you go to try to configure it locally, it's not gonna matter what you put here because the domain policy dictates what's happening. So it overrides the local policy. So even if you can configure it on the local policy and it's not grayed out, it won't take effect because of what it's doing on the domain level. I really thought this would be in here and grayed out. Maybe they changed something with 2019. Anyway, so what are we gonna make our last screenshot? Let's just do this. This will be our last screenshot, okay? So it shows that we replicated the policy and we updated it on the machines. And I'm not sure what's going on with the, I would have thought it would be showing on that screen and maybe it just needs, maybe I need to restart this system or something. I don't know. I could try to reboot Mercury. I will do that. I don't want to hold you here any longer. You've all been very patient. So what I'm going to do is let's just capture this screenshot, okay? Is that fair enough?
Yeah,
And then if
Yep.
if I reboot the server and I get a grayed out entry there that shows antares.canis.local, I'll send it to you, okay? But this does work. So basically you can define hundreds or thousands of machines from a single screen, and that's what we just did. So any questions before we clear the domain environment? None of this works unless you have the managed switch, you have DHCP, and you have DNS pre-configured. None of this happens unless you have all of that configured, right? So this is a last item. We're going to call this okay. So that's the last step. When we get an update now, if I go to Antares and I update Antares once, that same copy on the local network will flow 1,000 times faster to each of the client systems on that network. So essentially that's what we've set the stage for here. Are there any questions? So I'll go ahead and email you screenshots 9 and 10 unless you have a good screenshot yourself, okay? So does everybody have a good screenshot themselves?
yeah.
Yep.
I would
Okay.
like a better one. You could just email to me.
Okay, that's Robert. All right, I'll go ahead and email it to you. And by tomorrow morning, I'll have a basic outline of the steps to follow, but you have this video. I'll have this video out there, okay? And what I need you to do on your system, on your virtual machine, is to set up those 3 roles and create your own custom domain in your DNS server, right? And then create a DHCP scope that defines how the network's how it's gonna function securely, reliably. And then once that stage is set, you can implement your Active Directory in 90 minutes or less, and you have what you need to centrally control everything. This would conclude what we wanted to demonstrate for today. Does anybody have any questions before we finish our last session?
No, no question.
No.
Okay. We have